Welcome to today's edition of Severe Thunderstorm Outlooks. I'll start out today by showing the last 3 days of severe weather. There's been quite a few tornado reports, and we do have severe weather possible today, big time tomorrow, affecting a lot of people from Canada basically down to Texas with all kinds of different modes of severe weather, tornadoes certainly included. And even on Saturday, we have a slight risk for severe storms. Then we take a break for a while, which is going to be a relief. I'm meteorologist Ted Keller. Let's look at the details of our severe weather possibilities. I want to start off by showing you the tornado reports and all the severe weather reports for the last 3 days, 72 hours. So this would be Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And you can see it's been pretty active. Here are the tornado reports. And a lot of this any of the days actually had their own unique tornadoes forming. Close to where I broadcast from here in Springfield, this was the unusual cluster of storms that produced some tornadoes Monday night. This was actually last night on the very northern end of the developing thunderstorms and tornado watches, but it was the only tornado reported from tornado watches that stretched from southwest Missouri all the way down to Texas. I believe this one around Tulsa was the same Monday night as this. These I'm a little more unclear of, but I think it was Tuesday that produced most of these right here. So it's been interesting. If you look at thunderstorm wind gusts over the severe level, 59 miles per hour or greater. Actually, I have some here that are less than that, I'm noticing. But yeah, we had some 72 mile per hour wind gusts down up just around the Clinton area and just all over the place. Just a very busy active pattern. This was largely forecast by the Storm Prediction Center, and 1-inch hail or larger showed up in a lot of different places as well. Now today, the overall intensity of the severe weather possibilities has gone down percentages, but it's still a pretty active day for two pockets. One would be solidly in New York State and to parts of New England. That's where the level 2 is located. And another one down here in Arkansas has a slight risk of severe weather, including Little Rock and Jonesboro and up to Mountain Home, those areas. Almost back to Fort Smith, right along I-40 there. As far as tornado risk going along with that, 5% probability in that slight risk area in Arkansas that spills over into Tennessee, and then a 5% tornado risk in the heart of New York State. So basically right around the Syracuse area is where that maximizes, right along east and west of there. And then on the severe hail risk side, so severe hail is 1 inch diameter or greater, that coincides with a slight risk, almost the same, I believe. They probably are, that's the logic going into the slight risk, not so much the tornado. And then the severe wind risk doesn't really show up in Arkansas, but it does show up here in that band up in New York State. As far as Colorado State University's review, it does emphasize a little bit of tornado activity later on, it looks like, in the outbreak and into parts of New England. It's only a 2% chance there. Hail is looking pretty good in an area just off to the east of Springfield, Missouri. And I'm going to take a look at that in a little closer detail. And in fact, that whole area out east of us is worthy of probably we'll do a heads up for maybe today, but mostly we're going to talk about tomorrow for southwest Missouri and northwest Arkansas. We'll get to that in a different video. And then, again, some wind risk in New England and just kind of a broad brush wind risk in Missouri and Arkansas. Here's what I wanted to show you. Nadocast is showing a 3% risk in that corridor there in New York State over into Vermont and New Hampshire. But interestingly, a little 2% pops up right around Ava, just south of there, actually, West Plains. I think that's interesting. I'll have to dive into that and see as the day progresses whether that actually evolves into something that's worthy of watching. And then on Friday, this is the biggest severe weather day. In terms of real estate covered and overall threats, Friday is a big day. A big jet stream coming in. So this is the larger look here. We have a level 3, which is called enhanced. It runs from north central Oklahoma all the way up to Wisconsin. And then a level 2, slight risk, covers a lot of real estate, almost all of Wisconsin, a good chunk of Illinois, a good chunk of Missouri, all the way down to Texas. If I zoom in just a little bit on that, just a little bit, you can see the severe thunderstorm risk is pretty much enhanced in this area of Wisconsin, eastern Iowa, let's say the northwestern half of Missouri, southeast Kansas. It does include Kansas City, Des Moines, Madison, Wisconsin, not quite St. Louis, but not quite Tulsa, but pretty close in those areas. Did I say Wichita, Topeka? Yeah, those areas. And if I overlay the tornado risk with that, there is a 10% up here. This is where the low-level wind fields will be at their best. I'll show you some evidence of that in a second. But all this area of brown here, this is a real question mark because I can see how any isolated cell or one cell as part of a group of cells could produce a tornado in here very easily. The wind profiles are arguably pretty good in some areas, so that's going to be interesting. What's also interesting is that large hail risk is at 30%, so 1 inch or greater chance of that happening within 25 miles of your house is 30%. So it doesn't quite get into, like, say, Springfield, Missouri, but it does include Kansas City, Topeka, Wichita, and almost Tulsa and Oklahoma City, and then up, of course, in that higher risk area there in Wisconsin, parts of Iowa and Illinois as well. Here's what's interesting. Once the squall line developed, there's a cold front cutting through here, and look at this, a 45% chance of a severe wind, 59 miles per hour or greater within 25 miles when the squall line develops. So Kansas City's included in that, just about Columbia, northern Missouri, back into eastern Kansas, and not a shabby risk of that, 30% covering a large area as well. Here is what CSU determines is just by looking at past data and integrating that in with current model information. The tornado risk is at a 15% chance there from around, well, just off to around Hannibal, Missouri, in that area up into eastern Iowa, maybe Iowa City, Cedar Rapids on the edge of that maybe. So I think that's very interesting. And then, the 10% risk kind of dribbles on down. This is what I'm talking about. I think this area here is actually something that needs to be watched very carefully. Hail is at its highest risk, very significant, in fact, through northern Oklahoma. And then again, the 45% probability covers a lot of ground. And then they are not as hot on the wind as the Storm Prediction Center is. But I think that's not really detecting it correctly, because I think the wind probabilities are accurate as far as SPC is concerned. So we're still on Friday here at 1 p.m. Look at the jet stream. And this isn't bulk shear because there's plenty of that. I just didn't decide to show that. But this is the 500 millibar flow, and it's complicated. And there are several little short waves that show up in here. There are several opportunities for low pressure to kind of strengthen at the surface and alter the little winds. The shear is, depending on what boundary things form on, is either very favorable for isolated supercells, which are more tornadic prone, or even lines of storms that could have tornadoes in them. So this is why there's such a broad brush painted on the severe weather forecast for Friday, because basically the entire area from almost Canada to Mexico has favorable wind shear anyway, just for supercells. The instability is actually building quite a lot. This is again at 1 o'clock on Friday. So anywhere from West Texas through Oklahoma straight up through here there's plenty of unstable air for thunderstorms to work with, not an issue. One thing you look at is how the low levels, very, very low levels of the atmosphere are rotating. It's called storm relative helicity. And it's best through Wisconsin and briefly here maybe along the front. It's okay in this area, but again, I would question, I think that's a broad scale brush, sure, but I think locally, especially this little area right here in southeast Kansas, I'm kind of curious, and I'll show you here our radar next, and I want to just kind of show you, first of all, that these storms up here are probably going to be tornadic. They're forming in the best possible zone. These are kind of in between two zones, and I'm not exactly sure if they're tornadic. They could be. This is along the cold front. There's our dry line here. Some storms that form in here could be pretty good. This looks like a prefrontal area of thunderstorms that's forming in eastern Kansas, and I'm kind of curious about that from a storm chasing perspective. I'm not going to go to Wisconsin. Too many hills and pine trees up there to contend with. Some of these storms are in pretty good chaseable area, but I'm kind of questioning whether they have the potential. I'm going to stick down here. And we'll take a look at that closer when we look at the forecast for tomorrow morning. I'm planning on chasing tomorrow. Might get into that a little bit on weather, on heads-up weather for the Ozarks. We'll see here later today. Then we go ahead to Saturday, level 2 for Columbus, Ohio, Cincinnati, almost to Pittsburgh, as this whole storm system is still trying to get out of here. Basically causing a lot of problems, tornado risk in that same basic area, wind risk reserved for areas once the squall line develops around Pittsburgh, and a hail risk is minimal, but there in that same area. Then we take a huge break. There's really nothing beyond Saturday. So nothing Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, we do have some severe weather possibilities coming back up. Kind of a question mark about troughing in the west. It looks like maybe down south. It might be where it's best, but they're just painting a broad brush here. And even if you look at Thursdays, which is day 8 way out there, there's more severe weather risks that start showing up. So we have about a 5-6 day breathing period here. And the supercell composite for the April 16th through 22nd period basically sums up the first that I just showed you. So really, this doesn't really apply to anything beyond Saturday. So, but again, you can see the supercell risks are really high in Oklahoma. And again, out in that area we talked about for tomorrow around the Quad Cities in western Illinois. And then, again, 23rd through the 29th, some evidence of stable air here, but still plenty of room to work here with unstable air and jet stream patterns favoring supercells from Oklahoma south into Texas. And then April 30th through already May 6th, same area. Again, some evidence that on average, high pressure will probably carve this area out and provide stable air, but return flow and high plains chasing activity during that period. Thanks for watching today's edition of Severe Thunderstorm Outlooks. This is published every day after the morning Storm Prediction Center update. Also, remember to check that site off on day 1 because they update it fairly frequently. If you like this video, please like it. Also, you can subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.